You have been here already for the review of Little Santa. You saw the review of its sequel, Happy Halloween Little Santa. That's all NBM published back in the early 2000s, but the series continued into Book 3, Little Santa versus Dr. Wicked. Yes, that's right. Le Docteur Méchant is basically French for Dr. Wicked, so I hope I can get some of that sweet, sweet SEO off of that Broadway musical / movie for this video. We'll see what happens. This book I had to bring in from France. It took about a month for it to make it overseas, but I'm glad I did because it's a pretty good book. It's a really good book, actually. First, let me just show you a couple things about the difference between the French edition of Little Santa and the American edition, because surprisingly, the American edition in some ways is actually better. It's a little bit smaller. You can see here if you line them up. It's a tiny bit smaller, but the art on the page is the same size. There just happens to be a little extra white space in the margins of the French book. So the art shows up at the same size. More importantly, the paper quality in the English edition is better than the paper quality in the French edition, which this may be the first time I've ever said that in my life. You can feel this book, this NBM book from the early 2000s, is heavier than this book from France, from Dupuis, that was printed, I believe, in Belgium. And I'm surprised. The colors show up a lot richer, a lot more saturated in the NBM press version than the French version. And maybe for some people they will prefer the lighter coloring of the French edition. You know, I kind of like the American edition, to be honest. But that's neither here nor there. Let's get to the story in general. We're back at Little Santa's home here on this little outcropping with the nice little ice bridge over there. You can see it's windy, it's cold. The bear's umbrella over here is blowing away. And inside, the snowmailmen are loving it. They're having a field day. This is their weather. This is the snow. This is the freezing cold. They're loving it. Santa wants to go out there and join them, even though his butler, I guess, Feather, implores him not to go out because it's too cold. By the way, Feather in the French edition is called Plumeau, which, you know, plume, feather, it all makes sense. It's very similar. And when we get to him later, the abominable snowman that we have in the American edition is Yeye the Yeti. And the elves, which we basically call impies or imps in the American edition, are Les Diablotins, which is, as far as I can tell, the little devils, I guess. So that's an interesting change of name there. So Santa goes out to join the snowmen. He's not feeling well. He comes back in. He reads some letters. He starts counting what toys the boys and girls want this year. And overwhelmingly, they want a robot. So he wants to go talk to the imps to discuss their plans for making these robots. And when he gets over there, he finds they're all sick. It's very cold, even in the warehouse there in the toy making palace that the imps have over there. You'll recognize a lot of these parts from previous books, but it is great stuff. Basically, Santa Claus goes over to his flat files. He's looking for the plans for the robot. He finds the plans, and he wants to see who was it who made these plans to begin with. And he finds the person who did and discovers that he lives somewhere in an island paradise, on an island with sun, where it's warm. And so Santa Claus is going to go there to talk to him about the plans for the robot, and everyone wants to go with him, and so everyone will go with him, including, yes, the Yeti. The Yeti, who is clearly sick. This thus begins one of the sequences in this book that are the most memorable. And this is what these books do so well. There is a starting point, there is an ending point, and everything in between will eventually get you there, but sometimes you just take a page, you take 2 pages, you take 3 pages, whatever it takes to tell a story within a story. And here we have Santa trying to find a way to keep Yeti warm while transporting him over to where the sled is so they can take a ride over to that island, a masterpiece of warmth and place where no one will actually be sick. So Santa comes up with the idea of blowing up his hat, sticking Yeti in there, being in there with him. You can see they're in the dark there together. Yeti is sneezing all over him. It's a cramped place, and Thierry Robin, the artist here, draws it beautifully. He cramps them in the panel. You can barely fit in the panel. They're just that close together. And now they're going to go bouncing like a bouncing ball. It kind of looks like an ornament a little bit. bouncing ball down the hill off trees. The two of them are cycling over each other, tumbling over each other. They go over the edge there. They're saved by a whale who happens to be spitting out the water at that time and sends them back. They bounce over this bear who's over a campfire. They bounce over this reindeer who basically kicks them or headbutts them back up. Bounces off this rabbit. This is a classic animation thing, right? The bouncing ball. It's like the first thing you learn in animation is how to draw a bouncing ball, how to stretch it out, how to squash it, how it moves, how it bounces, the timing of the whole thing. The rabbit here gives him a kick and gets him back moving again, all to get to the end, to the reindeer shed where the reindeer are, and there's where the sled is, so they can take off and have this great trip over to a warmer place. And there's a quick guest appearance from the Halloween characters from the second book. Long story short, they get there, and that's a great thing. It is a long story. It's 48 pages, but it's not that long. It's a great read. Every page is not wasted. Every page has something new to it. Every page has something working against Santa. In this case, you have these tentacles coming up from the water who are capturing Santa, plus all of the imps, plus the Yeti. They meet the doctor who's in control, I guess, or who can talk to the octopus-type creature and tell him to let them go. And so he does. They meet, they drink together. Here's the workshop, another one of these great sort of half-page splash pages that Robin draws in these books with lots of detail. Just look at all that paperwork, the drawing tables, the flat files, the bookshelves over there. It's just great stuff. I mean, here's just a page of Santa Claus talking to the good, in this case, the good doctor. Like his name here. Professor, I don't even want to pronounce that, Bathuzero? I don't know. We'll call him the professor. The professor who has all these plans for all these great inventions and comes up with them with no problem. But you have all these panels to, as you read it, you see what they're talking about. You see the back and forth about the professor is offering Santa a drink. Santa doesn't want the drink. He wants to get to business. He wants to talk to him about the plans. The professor is very excited to show him his new plans for the new robot that he's going to make. But, of course, that's when this robotic dinosaur type creature comes in to steal the plans for the bad guy in the book, who we'll get to shortly. He runs off. He cuts the end off the octopus's tentacle. That's very mean. Don't worry, it comes back later in the story. He's okay. It's a plot point. Consider this panel Chekhov's gun right there. The Yeti, just as expression-filled as ever, just as cute as ever, playing with the imps in the water here, splashing them into the water. And then there's a big aerial combat sequence between Santa Claus, who's taking his sleigh to go after that robot dinosaur creature to try to get the plans back. He fails the first time. There will be other times, don't worry. There's that tentacle. The tentacle saw things. The tentacle can draw the map. Now he has a map where, 15 pages left to go in the book. Santa Claus is getting closer to getting those plans back and finding out why the villain of the book, Dr. Wicked, I might remind you, is trying to steal it. Santa Claus gets this neat little... It reminds me of a Super Mario Brothers object. Super Mario Brothers 3, was it, where he could become a raccoon that flies? That kind of thing. Well, here he can gain these extra legs and this sort of rocket ship thing, so he can fly as well. And off he flies, following the map. Each place on the map he sees, he goes to the next place on the map, he sees that one. He gets to this big, huge base, and that's where he starts getting into a fight with not just the original dinosaur robot villain, but all of them, a whole collection of them. And the aerial fight commences, and here's where the bad guy is building the really big robot creature. Bad guy's coming out of the shadows. There he is, Dr. Wicked. Mr. Wizard is a whole different person from Nickelodeon when I was a kid. This is the evil Dr. Wicked, who is now controlling this robot and will take hold of Santa Claus and do what he can to beat him up. And they go back and forth for a few pages. And it's just great storytelling. And I've said this a million times with these books, and I will say it again with, by the way, spoiler alert, the fourth book coming up next is even better than this one. We'll talk about that in detail when we get there. And here Santa Claus gets control of the robot, and we alternate panels. We go back and forth between Santa making a move, the robot makes the move. Santa pulls on some other levers, the robot makes a different move, back and forth, back and forth. The robot goes upside down, so he sees Santa Claus going upside down because he's, inside the robot over there. He just throws everything, whatever he can at it, and finally the robot takes off, and away they go. And then it becomes almost a kaiju battle, because there's another giant robot that comes after him, and they're fighting in this city street, and they go through this bridge over here and break it apart, but Santa Claus has to protect the people, right? This is like a whole Superman moment, almost, where Santa Claus is now trying to hold the bridge up to protect the people. The imps are helping out. The Yeti is helping out. Everyone's coming together to save the day and beat evil Dr. Wicked, and everyone has a happy ending. And yes, the robot is still the most popular toy by far, but Santa Claus is now ready to take on the day. And the evil Dr. Wicked is at the bottom of the sea. The end. I'm kind of racing through this because I don't want to spoil the whole thing, but I want you to have an idea of just how well laid out this book, how great the storytelling is. The overall story I've just given you, but trust me, there are moments at every step of the way which tell the story so well and are lessons in how to tell a story sequentially. That's what the brilliance of this book is, and the brilliance of this series is. It's not just a gimmick that it's silent storytelling. It shows you how to tell a story and how you don't always need words to do so. So that is Petit Père Noël contre le Docteur Méchant, or as we would probably say in America, Little Santa versus Dr. Wicked. Volume 3 in the series. I'll be back soon with Volume 4.